Welcome to No Stage, Just a Chair. I'm Brian, and this is me trying to figure things out without pretending I already know how. If I sound foolish, that means it's working. Music sounds a little 80s? Good. I was basically raised on synths and questionable hair choices. And if any of this sounds familiar, pull up a chair. Am I the only person have to have things in a certain font? I might be a little compulsive. I wish that I could pick a font that when I use my computer, it always just brings it up in that font in every platform. I wish there's like a universal setting on my computer. When I type, I want it to be Century Gothic. I don't know why, but it makes me feel like I'm a little bit cooler. So my dad has this really funny thing that I've thought about for years and years and years. So I've talked about my dad a few times in a few different episodes. He was just kind of a cartoon character of a human. He knew people everywhere. He would talk to people everywhere. He would just didn't know a stranger. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about him and my mom, and this is kind of a little bit of the mythology. I don't know if with mythology would be the right word, but that's the word I'm going to go with because I like mythology. I like that word. My parents met when they were in the second grade. My dad was a little blonde-headed boy, and my mom was a little blonde-headed girl. They met in the second grade. They lived in this tiny little town called Pond Creek. I can't even make that up. Pond Creek. But it's a small town outside of a small town, which is outside of another small town, way out in the middle of nowhere in northwestern Oklahoma, roughly. And they met in the second grade. They started going together in the sixth grade. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. And they went together pretty much all through high school. My dad was the football captain. My mom was a homecoming queen. They got married straight out of high school. Had a family right away. My dad went off to fight in the Korean conflict and spent the first year and a half of my sister's life overseas. My mom would tell stories about that she had a picture of my dad on the mantle, and whenever she would talk to my sister when she was a baby, she would say, "Where's Daddy?" And she would look at the picture on the mantle because that's what she knew of Daddy because of the way life was. None of that really has anything to do with the bigger story that I'm telling here. But what I thought was really interesting is my dad's lucky day was Friday the 13th. Not a normal lucky day. He was born on Friday the 13th. He and my mom got married on Friday the 13th. My sister was born on Friday the 13th. And I can remember growing up that my dad would always, every time there was a Friday the 13th, he would make a comment about that it was his lucky day. And something that has like this cultural aura around it of being this dark day, of this kind of like negativity, was like this day of celebration in my family, in our household, because that was Daddy's lucky day. And even now, my dad passed away years and years ago. But even to this day, when Friday the 13th rolls around, it's a rich day. And I almost always text my sons and make a comment to them the same way that my dad would make comments in real life to me growing up about it's our lucky day. And I'm kind of sentimental about it. It's kind of a beautiful day in our life. And my thought that goes along with it is that meaning is informed by our lived experience. For me, Friday the 13th is a good day. It's a lucky day. It's a celebratory day. For some of you, Friday the 13th might be the day you stay home. For some of you, it might be a different day of the year. Who knows? Or it might be another thing that we've kind of gravitated to as this legendary omen that we grew up in. And we grew up in it. We experienced it. I have another friend that every year at Christmas, on Christmas Eve, they would order takeout pizza. And they did it every year. And I didn't ever know why. And I was part of Christmas Eve with their family a few times. I never understood it till at one point my friend said, why do you guys do pizza on Christmas Eve? Is it because it's easy? And they're like, no. When I was a little boy, my dad was in a bad car accident on Christmas Eve and he almost died. And we spent Christmas Eve in the hospital hoping that my dad was going to make it. And obviously he did. But every year, as a way of reminding us to say thank you, as a reminder, as a mile marker, as a milestone, as a signpost that reminds us, something to signal us for gratefulness, we have pizza every year to remain grateful that we still have my dad. Wow. Like I didn't even write any of that. None of that is in my notes. Like I just had this little moment right here thinking about these rich moments that we find because of our lived experience. Like, what are those rich moments? What are those things that we carry and don't realize it in like the most beautiful way? And for me as a dad, I'm sitting here thinking right now, what are the stories that someday my sons will tell about me? What are the rich moments that are shaped by lived experience? Can I tell you something that is a complete departure from everything? And I want to throw this out there. Complete departure. But this is also, it touches on that lived experience side of things. This is a thing you can do, and I hope that you would do. On Mother's Day, send a text message to a single mom that says, Happy Mother's Day. On Father's Day, send a text message to a single father that says, Happy Father's Day. Because on those days, with people that are encountering this chapter for all intents and purposes alone, that little moment of care from you might shift a hard day into a good day. You might actually shift their experience, their lived experience, by caring about them. And I can unpack 100 reasons why that matters, but I'm not going to right now. Maybe I will at some point in the future. But just do that thing, because our lived experiences have ramifications that extend out infinitely. And I want to tell you, like the punchline, so to speak, of this Friday the 13th. So like I said, my dad was born on Friday the 13th. He got married on Friday the 13th. My sister was born on Friday the 13th. And a few years ago, My dad fell and broke his hip. And when he broke his hip, his body started to fall apart. And I watched him fall apart. I watched his body not be able to heal itself. I watched his body collapse into itself. And the person that was 10 feet tall and bulletproof wasted away. And it was spectacularly hard. So hard. And I can remember one night, we knew that Dad was going to pass away soon. I have 2 siblings. They're much older than me. And what we would do is we would take turns. Each one of us would stay the night with Dad, so we'd be there no matter what. And if anything happened, we could call the other 2 and say, come to the hospital. So I had a night, slept in a chair next to my dad's bed. My brother had a night, he slept in a chair next to my dad's bed. My sister had a night, she slept in a chair next to my dad's bed. And one of the nights, it was Wednesday night, and it was the 11th, a Wednesday night. And I didn't realize this, but we were talking and among my siblings and I, and we said, who's staying the night tonight? And my brother piped up and said, nobody needs to stay the night tonight. I was like, why not? He said, it's the 11th. And as soon as he said it's the 11th, we all realized what he was saying. What he is saying is it's the 11th, which is going to turn into the 12th at midnight. Dad's not dying on the 12th. And he said out loud, he's going to make it to the 13th. And we all went home that night. We all slept in our own beds that night. Thursday night, the 12th. If I remember right, it was June. I'm trying to remember if it was June or July. I think it was June 12th. It would have been 2010, I think. All 3 of us were sitting around the bed. And about 3 a.m., my dad passed away. With his 2 sons and his daughter sitting next to him. Each of us holding his giant hands. And we were there for that moment. And it was this fitting finish. He was born on Friday the 13th. Got married on Friday the 13th. His daughter was born on Friday the 13th. And he passed away on Friday the 13th. And can I say a really silly thing? On some level, I believe that to this day, and no one will ever be able to convince me otherwise. That was sheer force of will on my dad's part. I believe it. He was going out on that day. And the legacy that it leaves behind, the tale, the echo that happens every Friday the 13th this year. Friday the 13th was the Friday before Father's Day. And I remember that my sons and I were sitting in a movie on Father's Day watching, feel free to make fun of me, we were watching How to Train Your Dragon together, the live action version, on Father's Day. That movie has a special place in our family. We watched it together and I realized not only is it Father's Day, but Friday the 13th was the Friday before. And I knew that my dad had passed away 18 years before that. There was a memorial. There was an echo that happened, and that echo is really sweet, really good, really rich. That's the legacy that he left. And the thing that I walked away with on that day, and that I've thought about a lot, is that some patterns are not accidents. There are moments that ask you to pay attention. So in that moment, and in the good days and the bad days and the between days, in the rich moments and the moments that we blow past, in all those moments, it's good for us to get reminders to pay attention. In the previous episode, I talked about the thin red line. That's the thing that's not an accident. That happens because it's born from your nature. It is a pattern for us to recognize. So I would ask you today, what are the patterns for you to recognize? I have a friend that I've known for years, again, years and years. My friend Stacy. She has a degree in sociology. She teaches at a university. She spends half her time teaching and half her time doing research. We sat down a few months ago and we ate at this really great restaurant, talking with her and her husband. And I asked her what she was working on. What's kind of interesting to her right now? And she made this comment in passing that made a pretty profound impact on me. She said that they're doing research into a lot of the mental health, emotional health kind of predictors like ADHD and a lot of these, like a lot of the things that we're seeing a lot of right now. She said that one of the things as sociologists that they're looking at is there something that we can connect this awakening, awakening's not the right word. We're seeing widespread diagnosis of ADHD and a lot of these behaviors and a lot of these things that are going on in us as a culture. And she said, is there a reason why that's happening? Because it's not like we've mutated genes and it's magically become a thing. It hasn't. There's something that is contributing to that. And if we look back through history and time, what is the thing throughout history and time that connects to this moment? That is, and I talked about this earlier, I'm going to scroll back to it. What are the patterns that are not accidents? But they're the things that make us stop to pay attention. And she said something that I've hung on to a lot. She said, what if there is a human genetics component tied to all these things? I said, I don't know what you mean. She said, her words, not mine, I'm not an expert in this, her words. She said, a lot of times people who have ADHD tend to, in their genetic history, be tied to hunters and warriors. Because ADHD is tied to hypervigilance, and hypervigilance is really beneficial to hunters and warriors. And she said there's been more change in human culture in the last 150 years than in the last 10,000 years combined. Frame of reference. 200 years ago, no one had flown. In the last 150 years, not only did we learn to fly, but we went to the moon. Massive changes. 200 years ago, 100 years ago, hell, 25 years ago. When I graduated high school, there weren't cell phones. Now, I could look on my phone right now, tell you exactly where my kids are. When I was a kid, my parents said, come home when the lights come on. Now I can just send my kids a text message and say, come on home. More changes in the last 150 years than in the last 10,000 years combined. And she said, what if a lot of our behavioral struggles, a lot of our relational struggles are connected to the fact that it's our evolution, genetics, and biology trying to catch up to the world that we live in? And I thought that was really fascinating. What if it's our bodies trying to catch up to the pace and life that we live now? So I went home and I did something that was really pretty beautiful. And I didn't really know what it would be. But I sat down with my little AI program and I typed out. Because I know from genetic testing, I've had the little 23andMe that tells you like your origins. So within my body, within my genetic makeup, for all intents and purposes, I'm about 75% Scandinavian. Scandinavian, Nordic, kind of that whole pocket of the world. Very German, very Swedish, some Scottish, Irish, kind of that whole corner of the world. And then the other 25%, almost 25%, is I'm Crow-Indian. So I sat down with my little AI program and I typed in, based on only this information, that I am 75% Scandinavian, Nordic, and 25% Crow-Indian. How is it that I view family and life and work and friendships and relationships? How do I view those things based only on that genetic information? And the answer I got back was unsettlingly accurate. And I've shared it with a few of my closest friends, and every one of them has looked at it and gone, whoa. And it is this reminder to me, it's this road sign, this mile marker to me that says that my ancestry, that my instincts, that my genetics, that my values have carried across generations. It's not just the legacy of my father, but it was his father and all of my parents, all of the contributing factors to who it is that I am today. They, in the same way that my father's legacy echoes into the future, my values are echoed back from the past. And they are 100% interrelated. They just are. It's to an extent that I look at it and go, this is remarkable. And it says this thing, and I don't know if I should say this because it will probably sound a little darker than it is. But there was a phrase that came out whenever it talked about how I value life and how I view life and how I react to all these things. But it used this phrase over and over in the document. And it said, your blood remembers. And that may sound a little macabre, may sound a little grisly, but it's not. I don't think it is. It is a reminder that my pulse is not just in this moment, but it's been affected and shaped by thousands of years and thousands of decisions that contributed to this moment. And in this moment, all these things also echo forward. And it was this very concrete example of how the stories we come from shape the way we walk through this world. Identity is not invented. It is remembered. And it doesn't mean that I don't have it doesn't mean that I don't contribute in a meaningful way, but I have to realize that my contribution exists within this giant echo that is the world and the culture and the genetics and the legacy that I live in. So I want to read something that I was just feeling inspired and looking at this and I want to say this. This is not a poem. This is not a thing. This is me saying I wanted to choose my words very carefully, so I wrote them down very specifically. What looks like coincidence becomes a mirror. What looks like superstition is born from memory. What looks like a date becomes a doorway. We carry more of our ancestors than we realize. Lineage is not pressure, it's orientation. There are little giveaways. There are little micro influences. And in all these micro influences, they build together into the whole of what you are. So I have 4 questions that I want to leave you with today. Question number 1. When you succeeded most fully, what quiet part of you was there? I've referenced in the last couple episodes that thin red line. When you look at your successes, when you look at your bright days, when you look at your bright seasons of life, when you look at your history and you look at the things that you love that happened, what is the common denominator of those things? Second question, where do you feel most like yourself in a world that keeps speeding up? Third, what truths about who you are have you been taught to shrink? There are things that are part of you, that are part of what's valuable and beautiful and amazing about you, that you have been taught to shrink. I've referenced this a few times. I'm 6'8". I'm on the giant side of the continuum. And I've said this to several friends in the last few months. Not literally, but metaphorically, there have been a lot of times that I've walked into rooms and I feel like I need to be smaller so that I don't either make somebody feel uncomfortable or so that I don't look like I'm too much. Who I am, how I'm made, how I'm built. I'm not going to shrink. Fourth, what do you want your children to remember about themselves long after you're gone? Hear that, because this is not the question that you think I just asked. What do you want your children to remember about themselves? Not about you, not about your echo, not about your story, not about your things, not what do they reminisce about you about? No. What do you want your children to remember about themselves longer after you're gone? That's the one that I want to get after. I hope that today was helpful. And this is where I say it messy, before you assume that it was neat all along. See you next week.